Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. My name is Mr. DB333, and welcome back to What's Mine for the New last days Europe as the state of Guangdong. In the last video, we shut down the Guangdong Federation of Traders, and now we just have the Committee of Chinese Labor. I'm trying to figure out, well, it didn't take too much of time to consider it, but I think what I might do, I might mix things up a little bit. It might go terribly, admittedly, that's why I'm saving, but let's try to negotiate. Well, if that ends the riots, that thought had entered Matsushita's mind no more than a few times while the entire government scrambled to deal with the worst crisis in Guangdong's history. It was inevitable, initially at a volume just above the whisper, but it grew even louder as it became increasingly clear the riots would not magically disappear. It was markedly tempting. They would have to make some concessions to protesters, of course, which could prove troublesome, but hopefully they would only be minor ones, and all that chaos would be over and business could return to normal. Despite the very late hour, many of the government's highest officials were there, huddled in the office to discuss the matter. They put on bright faces, though from their slouched shoulders and slightly dipped heads, one could tell they were all exhausted. Chief Executive addressed him one last time. Go again, Igrashi, one more time. Yes, of course. Once we begin negotiations, the protests will expect that we come to some sort of agreement with them. It's absolutely critical that they give us right the first time. We'll probably not get a second chance. Ultimately, decision up to you, Chief Executive. Shall we begin negotiations? Okay, so back up before sending our initial proposal. Once it's sent, though, there's no turning back. We'll apologize. To end the riots by negotiation was first craft a proposal. We have 10 possible revisions to add, each one more radical than last. The proposal needs to be considered the bargaining power of a chosen rider group through the strength and radicalism, as well as what the LUDCO is willing to pass based on our government despair. Too many concessions will also get in Japanese nerves. It can lead to heightened tensions with the IGA garrison. Do individual accountability. We could do restitution. And we could do retraining in social welfare. Their strength is low. The radicalism is still pretty high. But this proposal, which we have worked very hard on, is a sign of our commitment to the future of Guangdong. We sincerely hope that our concerns are addressed. Yes, we come from very different perspectives, but both want peace and stability in Guangdong. So as long as we begin at that point, I'm confident that we'll eventually come to an agreement. Thank you. Closing went quickly, since there was no love lost between the government and the protesters. Chief Negotiator Igari Masoto had just finished presenting the government's proposal in a cold hotel meeting room, and remained standing as he waited a response. The protesters exchanged whispers between themselves for a few short seconds. His reply was short and direct, his tone terse and assertive. While we have some shared interests, we also have to make sure to review every point of your proposal. Thank you. The protesters' delegation then gathered in another corner of the meeting room, lowering their voices to prevent being heard. As their low, indistinct grumbling went on, Igarashi tried to eavesdrop on the conversation, managing to grab snatches of it here and there, fragments that were enough to make him and the rest of the negotiating team sweat. I'm telling you, this is nowhere near enough. Very fall apart right now. It reads more like a document of surrender. This went on for a few minutes, but it felt longer, and their leader stood up again, bringing the current session to an end. We'll need some more time to review your proposal, but we'll be in touch soon. We're trying to play nice. Whether they want to continue playing nice, to be determined. But and now we'll throw some Chinese people in the meat grinder to get this quality going. Sergeant Leiboy of the Guangdong Police Force frowned as soon as the men approached the wet market. Several anonymous calls warned the protests attended by violent agitators would be taking place, but as the light grew closer, he did not hear the chants or shouts he'd come to recognize. Perhaps they were simply being quieter than usual. His last shred of faith in the anonymous support withered and disappeared when he stepped in the wet market. Stalinos and customers gave him sour looks, but otherwise ignored the police. As a few passers-by shouted protest slogans at the authorities, but his men quickly made themselves scarce. Shaking his head light, he signaled to his men to head back to the vehicles. Dispatch, as cold lead or deliberate lie. No disturbance of the wet market. Copy. Copy that, Sergeant Lai. Returning to the station at once. Protest group has taken a position outside and backup's been requested. Lai grunted in affirmative and climbed into his police car, miffed to have been sent off on an errand only to be called back like a dog. As the police precinct wailed into the evening, Lai made his way back to the precinct. Emerging from the car with a baton in hand, he could see the immense crowd surrounding the building. Held back by only a few thin ranks of policemen, the shouts of the crowd were deafening, briefly halting Lai in his step. Setting himself, Lai turned and looked at his men, all equipped with batons, shields, and shining handcuffs. Let's get to work, boys. There wasn't much for Chief Negotiator Igarashi and his team to do. Much for Chief Negotiator Igarashi and his team other than wait anxiously. Even though the protester delegation indicated their willingness to return to the table, was still nerve-wracking. First thing Igarashi noticed when he saw the protesters' representatives again was that there were fewer than before. Between a quarter to a third of members in return seemingly upset at what was unclear. When the meeting began, their leader read from what was clearly a prepared script. Igarashi prepared for the worst. After extensive consultation of our leaders and grassroots, we are prepared to make a decision. Based on what we've seen, our movement has decided to accept your government's proposal. He said the entire government negotiating team immediately relaxed, letting out brief breaths they did not know they were holding. Some could even resist, cracking a smile. Others began thinking of how they would celebrate later that night, probably with copious amounts of alcohol. But the protesters' leader wasn't interested in letting them relax. His next words were stern, delivering unsmiling. Do not think that this is the end. Talk is cheap. We have had enough of your empty, unfulfilled promises. We expect concrete, tangible action to be taken by your government. It's time to put your money where your mouth is. And that would have to be up to Valedko. Igarashi thought. That would be the only way to convince them that we mean what we say. But this is a good start, at least. Proposal will now be sent to Valedko. Well, you will have to pass it before it comes into force. Most important week. We haven't handled for the most part. Look, do you not understand how important this is? I know it's difficult, but we must get this bill passed at all cost. And unless people like you vote for it, Guangdong will collapse. If you haven't read it yet, this isn't a deal, considering what we're giving them. This might as well be called the Surrender Act. Guangdong will collapse if we take this so-called deal, not if we reject it. Hallways just outside the chamber of the Legislative Council were animated, a buzz of activities, even as such an early hour. Many were holding well-worn paper copies of the proposal in their hands. Most were engrossed in quick-fire conversations about the document's contents. All of them understood the intense pressure on the councils to deliver a result. Two main camps emerged. Some were critical, and the attacks came thick and fast on every jot and tittle, ranging from somewhat skeptical to completely apathetic. At the same time, one could just as easily find those who defended the bill as the best they could get, and that there were numerous passionate advocates who argued for proposals, as if their lives depended on it. When the government and when doors of the chamber opened a few minutes before the proceedings began, the legislators filled in without a moment's hesitation, taking back their seats without delay. On top of their schedules, 4 blocky wards. Vote in 10 days. The upcoming vote will be one of the most important of their lives, if not the most important, and they have less than 2 weeks to make their decision. Project questions were prepared by all lawmakers, ready for the moment the floor was open. There would be no time to waste. The speaker walked up the dais, tapped the mic, and then said, "The bill has been introduced. Debate may now commence." 10 days. Let's see. We will receive 10 votes in favor of the compact. Oh, Jesus Christ. Well, it was worth a shot. Almost involuntary, Matsushita rubbed his eyes again, realizing after that he'd done it for the second time in 3 minutes. How many weeks had it been since he got a proper night's rest? Speaking of which, it's almost 1 a.m. Shit. He glanced at a table clock. It was 4 a.m., the dead of night, and the entire city of Koshi was fast asleep. In truth, he hadn't noticed it was this late. From the noise, he could tell that the negotiations and informal vote counting were just as frenzied as when they began in the morning. But the days were fluttering by quickly. Too quickly, and soon it would be time to vote on the proposal. Despite the government's best efforts, there were still many recalcitrants of the letgo. The vote could well come down to the wire. An age-old idea came to the front of Chief Executive's mind. To be precise, there were 2 potential solutions to the problem. So what was the option to twist people's arms? The government could, with more than a bit of pressure, strong-arm the bill's opponents into voting for it instead. Others could be convinced by T-money, provided the government was willing to provide enough of it. Given the stakes, however, the cost of taking either option would be nothing short of extortionate. Not to mention, this would essentially supercharge corruption in Guangdong. Matsushita pondered the options in front of him. Yes, it was a government, but the government might just have to bite the bullet and take it. We have what it needs. We don't have what it needs. But, you know, now we do. I'll be honest, I'm just feeling tired. Yeah, I'm tired. It's almost 1 a.m. And I want to get up to wrapping this up, so perhaps a little anticlimactic, but I figured, yeah. I was going over in Germany, by the way. They're still on the all this, aren't they? World seems a little stuck, honestly, right now. No war here, no war there. USA is still doing their elections. Granted, I don't think I've played this far into the game, at least in Spears, Germany. Definitely not since the USA. So, yeah. The thumping boom of boots on asphalt pounded louder and louder in Dai's ears. A throng of shouting protesters approached the gangplank, a contingent of red-faced, lightly pressed police officers barreling after them. Dai's supervisor on the Star Ferry had seen them seconds before. He was already waving for the rabble-rousers to come aboard. Running to the plank, Dai was first positioned himself at the railing, ready to heave it overboard. Turning, saw the ship come alive behind him. Other crew members preparing themselves to cast off from port. The ropes were untied, anchors lifted, and the engines roared to life in a flurry of activity. Even the protesters began pouring to the deck. Halt. Shutting criminals is illegal. Hand them over at once. Just as Dai was about to push the gangplank away, he noticed a man in a battered, threadbare suit hobbling just ahead on the stream of policemen. Swearing, Dai leapt onto the pier even as a police's boots met its wind frame. He grabbed a hold of the aging man and practically threw him over the side of a ship, leaping back on board in a feat of inhuman strength as he never imagined himself capable of. Cast off! Hollered the ferry's captain from above the confused mass. In moments, just as Dai saw the first officer reach a plank, it fell away into the ocean. The Star Ferry began what was sure to be their final voyage. As they sailed away from the dock, insults and taunts were thrown back at the cops. Dai decided to focus on the tending to the recently wounded, and what he gathered was a police charge. Back on the pier, policemen painted in blue shirts and shorts. A daring final voyage. So what's it going to do? Poverty rate's going to improve slowly. Less let go seats, less Japanese approval, more Chinese approval. They get the apology of the CCL compact and restitution of the CCL as well. Oh! Small man, some executive for Matsuhara's company, had been granted the right to tallywalk to the podium in the center of the council floor. He stood at the podium, watching the crowd of executives and waiting for them to quiet. Finally gave a short statement to the microphone. The passes of negotiations with the dissidents can be now put into effect. Conversation crashed to a halt across the floor as each man considered the weight of the moment. For those who had pushed forth the agreement, there could be celebrations later. For those who had fought back, seething and fuming. Yet for the moment, the room could be united in shock. As the moment set in, the initial shock gave way to quiet concern, a jittery contemplation of what might come next. The news thus far had only gone as far as this room. Soon we make its way through Guangdong and beyond, beholden to the judgment of every executive officer, general, or worker. Most importantly, every protester who pledged themselves to the other protester groups. The world would soon react to the news, and the world was very kind to Guangdong. But a shot in the dark is still a shot. How are we doing television-wise? Okay. Now I'm more skilled engineer, so let's do it. For those in the streets, the news of successful negotiations brought a weight off their shoulders. In marches across Guangdong, they shouted from success from their bullhorns, broke from picket lines, took down their signs, and went home. They walked away from the terror of crackdowns, investigations, and returned with victory. Not all accepted so easily. For many, the terms felt too light, too minor, too easily sidestepped to truly protect Chinese workers. But for many, they trusted their leaders, their negotiators. They believed in what their comrades had built, or at least that it was the best that could be given. It could be given the circumstances. No, the ranks of a dissidents did not swell of joy. Far from it, even their happiest members still carried a faint concern in their hearts that they may have done a bit more. But they returned to families, to good friends, to lives suspended by the terrors of the riots. They returned alive and safe, with hope that their next day of work might be a bit less dangerous, and the belief that Guangdong might have grown a hair fairer. The first woman in Finnish history. That's a butch-looking woman. Guessing that didn't click in yet. Maybe it's not in effect yet. Is that it? Close your eyes and listen. Sitting in the quiet of a day, it was clear that riots were over. Guangdong had endured many long weeks of blaring sirens and loud bells, of shouted slogans and unrestrained anger. They'd only recently ended, but now they seemed so distant, so unreachable. As discordant sounds disappeared, they were replaced by an uncomfortable and natural silence, but whether out of a sense of duty or just because it felt like the right thing to do, Lism's silence eventually returned to fill the void. Soon the silence vanished, replaced with a rather different set of sounds. All across the Free Pearls, you could hear the harsh high of scraping of protesters being removed. Young men worked hard, heaving mounds of rubble and ashes to clear the streets. Their beads of sweat fell on places where blood had once been shed. Of course, the low clunking of the factories had returned, a constant metronomic heartbeat that confirmed that Guangdong was indeed alive again. The riots had left many scars across all of society, and it wouldn't be easy to repair what could be fixed, heal what could not still be mended. But slowly, surely, things were settling again. And not in the old ways. Something had changed, and a new normal was beginning to emerge. And so, step by step, Guangdong marches in the future. And yet another sign of a return to crisis, relative calm after destruction wrought by the oil crisis. The Guangdong riots, brought about due to mass societal anger at living in a segregated system, have at last calmed down. Tense negotiations with government and a harsh crackdown have recently yielded calm on the streets of Guangzhou and other major cities within the corporate strait. The chief executive recently made a communique indicating total success and vowed to return to business one way or another. Tokyo has indicated congratulation. From Nanjing on the other hand, there is no comment. And I think I might leave it there. Honestly. Partially because I'm tired. I need to go to bed. Fuck, I was gonna record a Poland episode to go up for, I guess, not today, because this is gonna be far after the Poland series goes up, but I have miscalculated, and it's time for me to go to bed. So I'll see you guys next time. Hope you enjoyed, and you guys know the drill by now. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.